Hello everyone and welcome once again to my YouTube channel to another video, and here I'm going to talk about why we might still need to use Spring Boot if we are not building a REST endpoint. So using Spring Boot for building REST endpoint is something which is the most common use of Spring Boot. All of us do that. But even if we are not building a REST endpoint, please consider using Spring Boot for at least any one of these three cases. For example, if you are trying to build a console application which does some kind of one-time processing, maybe it's a HTTP client, maybe it does some kind of processing of some files, etc., you can actually build using Spring Boot. Same for a scheduled application which runs up at a specific time of the day or the night to process some specific files, then also consider using Spring Boot. And if you are building anything in the cloud for a serverless thing like AWS Lambda, then also consider using Spring Boot. And why? Because if you are using Spring Boot, all the auto configuration, the dependency injection, and other things of Spring Boot like injecting the properties and Spring Data JPA and all of the powers of Spring Boot come out of the box if you're using the Spring Boot framework. So even apart from using REST endpoints, please consider using Spring Boot for other kinds of applications. And in this demo, I'm going to show you a couple of examples very quickly wherein I have used Spring Boot outside of REST endpoint. So please stay tuned to it. And if you like my exciting session, then please go ahead and subscribe to my channel for similar videos which also excite me. So let's get started with the demo. Let us go to my GitHub repo again, which is mshomik78. So basically the entire URL is github.com/mshomik78, and then please go to this repo, high-level-code.java, and from there please go to the branch Spring Boot without REST, Spring Boot without web server. And there I have written the instructions very clearly. So please clone the branch and then do a maven clean package, and then you can start the program. And I will bring up my IntelliJ, and I have already created the package, but you need to clone the branch and create the package. And I will now run the program. So, but before I run the program, let me show you the program. So this is the main Spring Boot application, the main application which starts the Spring Boot app, and it implements command line runner so that there is a run function, run method, which can accept some arguments and it can run method. So if your purpose is to build a console app, say for example, the console app will make a HTTP request, or can do anything, basically can do some file processing, can decrypt some file and read some data from it and then do some processing. If your purpose is only that, which is a simple console application, then you can just override this run method and write your entire logic here, and this run method runs immediately after the server starts. So this is one way, and this is the very basic way of using Spring Boot without web server. And the other common way which I've actually used professionally is using the scheduled task, which is a very common thing that all of us mostly need in our real-time application. Like we always need to have some kind of batch job which runs at a specific time and does some kind of processing. Maybe it does some reconciliation or something like that. So here is an example of a batch job which runs at a fixed interval. It can also accept a cron expression so that it can actually run at that fixed time of the day or night. And see, it can be annotated with that component, like, although it's not Spring Boot, but it is a valid Spring Bean. So it is loaded by the Spring container, and then the properties can be read from application YAML. So everything apart from the controller aspect is present there. And that is the power of using Spring Boot instead of a simple Java class to actually write this kind of programs. And you will see that I have also written just a demo service here, which actually does not do anything, just for the purpose of the demo, that it is also annotated with at service, which means it is also a Spring Bean, and which is also injected by constructor injection here. So here is the constructor with constructor injection. The demo service is injected here. So the entire gamut of Spring's dependency injection is also at play here, as well as the scheduled annotation. So this is one example, one very practical example where we can use the power of this entire Spring framework to actually write a scheduled job. And I think this is more beneficial, or this is at least easier than using a main function and writing everything by hand and writing everything manually, doing everything manually. So instead of reinventing the wheel and writing a plain Java class, you can actually think of using Spring Boot for writing a console app or for writing a schedule app. Now, for writing a serverless application, that subject is a little bit more involved, and I'm going to create another video which will be dedicated towards how can we create a serverless application using basically the functional interfaces and can deploy it to AWS Lambda, and we can actually execute it, we can actually invoke it from outside. So that would be the topic of another video. Two more things before we conclude. One is, if you look at the POM of the same application, you will see that it only contains the Spring Boot starter. Of course, I have this compiler plugin and Spring Boot Maven plugin, but it only has the Spring Boot starter, not the web server, nothing else. So that is why if you look at the jar size, that jar size is also considerably smaller. And if you want to run the application, you can just run the application and can see it in action. And I have the instruction there in the README. So you can copy paste the last command to run the application. And you will see that when the application starts, then it immediately executes this method. So that's why this is like a console application, and then every 5 seconds it is actually executing the schedule task, and from there the call is going to the service layer. So that's why the service layer is also being executed. So this is the quick demo, and that's it more or less. I hope I had been able to add some value to you in this session. And if yes, if you find it interesting, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel for such interesting videos. Okay, thank you for your time once again, and bye-bye.